Professor Stephen Pinker, thank you so much for coming. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Roy?
Well, I'm very, very excited. I'm very, very
Okay.
excited. Okay, before we start, I had a funny incident 2 weeks ago. I was invited to a podcast, a liberal podcast in Israel, to speak about intelligence. And the podcast host had the book, The Blank Slate. Now, I knew just by the fact that he had the book, The Blank Slate, that it can't be too much on the left side. So you can't be full liberal on the left side if you're holding the blank slate. The blank slate, if you read the blank slate, it means so many other things. And I was right. And my question, my first question, did you ever realize that it's a transformative book? After you read it, you can't go backwards?
Well, I hoped so. And I did have a chapter in A Blank Slate on politics, raising the question of why, not always, but very often, the doctrine of the blank slate, namely there is no such thing as human nature, has been more congenial to the left than to the right. And there's some historical reasons for that, such as that if you're opposed to racism or sexism, then you're going to reject old-fashioned notions that the Italians have this personality and the Irish have that personality and blacks have that intelligence and so on. So you're naturally going to be more amenable to a doctrine that would make it impossible for any human groups to be different. Namely, if we all start out with zero, zero equals zero, and we're all the same. Also, it seems more congenial to a hope for improvement and progress. That is, people who are skeptical about improving society will say, you can't change human nature. Those who want to improve it, think you can improve it, will say, no, people are malleable. They may be aggressive and selfish now, but in some redesigned society of the future, they'll be much more generous and peaceful. Now, in the book, I actually argue, I acknowledge that these are the historical realities, but I also note that they are not non sequiturs, that they don't follow, that you don't have to reject human nature in order to have a classically liberal, humanistic Enlightenment outlook on life, that the commitment not to be prejudiced, not to be racist, not to be anti-Semitic, not to be homophobic, not to be sexist, doesn't commit you to the empirical belief that all human groups are indistinguishable, that we're all clones. It's just a moral commitment that you treat people as individuals and you don't prejudge them by some immutable characteristic like their race or their sex. Likewise, if there is human nature, it's obviously going to be complex. It's not just one urge or one learning mechanism. There's a lot going on up here. And many of the features of human nature are explicitly designed, so to speak, by evolution to take in information from the environment to adjust your reactions in response. We have cognitive processes that generate an infinite open-ended set of ideas, so we can come up with new solutions to problems. So human nature doesn't mean we're fixed to the same way of life as our ancestors, because we can always, human nature allows us to come up with new ideas. And a lot of progress can happen if some aspects of human nature can push back against other human aspects, such as laws and norms and systems that give people reason to inhibit some of their selfish impulses and live more peacefully. Not only is that theoretically possible, but in my subsequent book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, I've shown that it's actually happened. That is, when you measure violence quantitatively, you see that it has on average gone down over the course of history.
In some societies, which I think leads me to the core idea of our discussion today. And I will start with the second question. Now, Enlightenment thinkers like Leibniz, Descartes, and Kant are often seen as embodying the ideal of reason and science, offering a comprehensive worldviews. Similarly, and this is important as an Israeli Jewish, Moshe Mendelssohn or Moses Mendelssohn was a key figure in Jewish enlightenment in Germany.
Yes.
In your book, Rationality, you discussed how science and reason can inform our understanding of the world. And this raises a very serious question of uh, whether science can offer a complete worldview and ethical frameworks to those outside the scientific community. So, in your opinion, the science can give me a comprehensive worldview if I'm not a scientist?
Well, not science alone, because science is a way of understanding the world, but a moral system, a system of beliefs that gives meaning and purpose to your lives also has to specify what the goals are. What is good? What do we strive for? What makes life meaningful? Now, science can help in that once you've decided, say, that it's better to be alive than dead, it's better to be healthy than sick, it's better to be well-fed than starving. Science can show you how you get healthier, how you grow more food, how you prevent children from dying in the first 5 years, how do you prevent mothers from dying in childbirth. Science doesn't say those are good things, but it's not that controversial to say that it's a good thing if a mother doesn't die in childbirth, and science tells you how you prevent women from dying in childbirth. So they are connected, they are not identical.
But science again, and let me go back to Hume, we cannot derive ought from an is, like Sam Harris. Sam Harris argues that we can derive ought from an is. So from what I understand, your perspective is that science alone will not tell you good from bad.
Well, not by itself. It is true that it doesn't tell you whether it's better to be healthy than sick. But given that it's not that controversial to say it's better to be healthy, science can tell you how to be healthy. So yes, science doesn't tell you it's better to be healthy than sick. But science can tell you if you want to be healthy, here's how.
And again, in the current Israel-Gaza war, in the current war in Israel, we see different cultures understanding the world profoundly different about what is good and what is evil. Our enemies think, and I truly believe that our enemy thinks that what they're doing right now is good in a bizarre way.
Oh,
And
I agree with that. Psychologically, that is in their own heads.
yes,
That is what they think. And that's why I say in the better angels of our nature, the world has far too much morality. Now, by that, I don't mean that's a bit of a joke. I don't mean
yes,
literal morality. I think morality as people conceive it, namely, people, far more harm has been done by people acting in what they think is in service of a higher goal than in just selfish theft and predation and uh, exploitation. I mean, that happens too, but some of the worst genocides, holocausts were not done for selfish motives in the sense of maximizing profit, but because there was some perverse moral system that said that it was right. Now, here's how I think science, though, can kind of feed back on a moral system. Just to give you a simple example, in all the ancient civilizations practiced human sacrifice, often after hideous torture. And that was based on an empirical belief, namely, there is a deity that has a thirst for blood, and that if we voluntarily sacrifice a virgin or a firstborn, then maybe God will be satisfied and he won't want more blood from me. Now, that turns out to be based on factually mistaken circumstances. There is no such God who will make the crops grow or will give you victory in the battlefield if only you sacrifice some children or virgins. And I think it wasn't formal science, but as people got more savvy about how the world works, namely human sacrifice, in fact, doesn't make things any better, they lost their taste for human sacrifice. Now, that's a very crude example. But again, if you're less committed to scriptural doctrine, what was written in a book written thousands of years ago, if you are less confident about an afterlife, that you'll be rewarded in paradise, and so you're more focused on this life, which we know exists, then I think there's certain kinds of toxic moral systems that will be less appealing. The idea that I'll
definitely.
kill a bunch of people and I'll be rewarded with virgins in paradise, if you're scientifically sophisticated, I think that's less appealing.
We don't have so many virgins. We are
Well,
out
that's
of
another problem.
virgins. Okay.
We're running out of
And
virgins.
I,
That may be another problem. Yes.
I think, and I just want to tell my viewer that the story of the sacrifice in Genesis, Abraham and Isaac, And again, I know it in Hebrew, so it's very hard to translate. But I think it is profoundly different from all the other traditional stories because in this story, God tell Abraham, I don't want a human sacrifice. This is
Well,
like
no,
the gist
that's right.
of
And
the story.
that's part of that historical transition because the Hebrews of the Hebrew Bible don't practice human sacrifice, but you can tell that it's still kind of lingering in their memory because you had the temptation in the binding of Isaac. You had the story of the altar at Tophet, uh, and there was even concern with backsliding, that even though the Jews did not do human sacrifice, some of them were kind of tempted. So you can see this was after that historical transition.
And I will even go further. I will say that the main symbol of Judaism is the shofar, which means it's like the symbol of Abraham's sacrifice his son, and the main symbol of Christianity is the cross, which means that God sacrificed itself. And this is profoundly different notions of of the two religions. Now,
Well,
my other
indeed.
question.
Yes.
Okay, my other question, I have so much to ask you. Okay, there is a historical distinction, between rationalism and em empiricism that date back to a philosopher like Descartes, who embody French tendency to re-engineer society from first principles, and thinkers like Hume and Locke from the British tradition of empiricism, emphasizing experience and observation. Now, you yourself has expressed concern that the scientific methods can be misused when it's applied to create overreaching worldviews without empirical grounding. And this is a blank slate, of course. Today, many trends in academia, which you have been vocal about as being completely rational and anti-scientific, Judith Butler, for example, have become prevalent. Despite your status as a distinguished scientist, you find yourself as a minority on this issue. And my question is, how does attempting to re-engineer society from fundamental principles and misusing science to create broad worldviews contribute to the rise of irrational and anti-scientific trends in academia today?
Well, most scientists, you wake them up in the middle of the night and you say, "What science? What science?" In one sentence, standing on one leg, they'll say falsifiability. The idea from Karl Popper that the distinction between science and pseudoscience is there some way of finding out that you're wrong? That's probably oversimplified, but there's something to it. And a lot of the um, belief systems that often call themselves scientific, including designing society from the top down, are patently unscientific because they don't contain a mechanism for falsifying them. And some of the most horrific societies, like Mao's China, pursued policies that were clearly resulting in the deaths of tens of millions of people, but they were so sure that this was the scientific way to design a society, that they didn't get feedback from the world. Is this actually working? Which would have told them, no, your idea has been falsified. And so people often use the word scientific to refer to anything that's systematic, that's derived from principles, but that is not the essence of science, according to almost every scientist I know.
I think that you didn't answer my question. I think you did, but with your permission, I will use my chutzpah.
Please,
Okay,
yes.
okay. So my question was across. I wouldn't say all, but I want to say all. But many of the humanities department in top elite universities in the U.S., what you said is considered as a minority. Most of the academia today, at least in the humanities
It's
department,
in the humanities,
in the humanities, they disagree with you. So
yeah,
how don't they understand the concept of the Karl Popper?
yeah. The some of it is, we all know that beliefs can be signs of tribal loyalty, and there is in academia there's always the danger that people hire people like them, that there's no objective criterion for success in many of the humanities. It's not like in a business you either make a profit or you don't. In sports, your team wins or it doesn't. In science, theories are falsified or not. If you're just uh, conferring prestige on other people, well, prestige is often people who think like I think, who agree with what I agree with, and I think you can have a trap where the range of ideas gets smaller and smaller as academics promote each other. And so there are, and much of the humanities really has departed from common sense in that regard. The prose is incomprehensible. The ideas are exotic. But I think so. I think that's a danger. The other, an explanation for why the humanities have gone so far off the mainstream of common sense and scientific thinking. Another is that it often gives an exalted position to people in the humanities, that they are the ones who are enlightened, who see through the structures of oppression and manipulation that everyone else is blind to. That
And this is
the
great. This
the
is great.
highest of
This is the,
values is
yeah.
appreciating elite art in a way that you have to be indoctrinated into the cult to even know what to say in order to be part of the conversation. And so there's something that's also self-serving, that it is closed. There's a high initiation ritual to be admitted.
I will rephrase what you just said differently because I think you just nailed it. People in academia, mostly in the humanities, know, I don't say think, but know that those opinions, and some of the opinions are bizarre, give them social status of like a holy person, and
Yes.
they give him very high social status. And I can ask, two questions. One, why we as society, as the American society, which was founded on the concept of liberty, we treat those maladaptive ideas in such a great respect. But I would, with your permission, go the other way. There is a trade-off. You as an enlightenment guy, I think you are the archetype of the man of enlightenment. And basically, the enlightenment rejection common traditional wisdom. We, I want to rely on my intellect, sapere aude, etc. But when you take enlightenment to the extreme, and this is what exactly you said right now, you get enlightenment that betrays science. So where do you put the line? And maybe we need still to adapt common traditional wisdom in order to harness this tendency of enlightenment to go anti-scientific.
Well, there is an argument associated with Edmund Burke that sometimes traditions, norms, institutions, even if we can't articulate their rationale in verbal propositions, the fact that they've survived, that they've allowed society to cohere, shows there might be something to them, even if we can't explain in so many words what their value is.
Mm.
And I think there's something to that, but you can't accept it at face value. I think that just sets the challenge of understanding why a system of norms, traditions, common sense uh, has allowed positive consequences for society. Because we know that we get some traditions, some social norms are highly oppressive, and we can do better by abolishing them. Prejudice against gay people, the norms that kept women in the kitchen, slavery before that. So there is some value to questioning norms, habits, traditions, but still one could acknowledge that there may be a source of wisdom there that we ought to understand. I think in cases where our complex theory has gone off the deep end and given us the obscure pronouncements of postmodernism, are not so much cases of the Enlightenment project succeeding. Many of those have roots more in the counter-enlightenment of the 19th century than in the Enlightenment itself. They owe much more to Nietzsche and then to Heidegger than to Hume and Adam Smith and Baruch Spinoza.
I have read Charles Taylor recently about, I don't know how to say it in English, about the agony of modern life. I don't know how it translates into English. And it says many of the things, of some of the bizarre things that we say, that we see uh, uh, in modern student life. And he, of course, referred to Ellen Bloom masterpiece, the decline of the spirit in America. I don't know again
Closing of the
the name.
American mind. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. So again, this is part of the, he doesn't relate it to the Enlightenment, but it's related to the Renaissance and to the idea of, all the good ideas that Enlightenment and the Renaissance and the scientific revolution gave us. But it seems to me that sometimes you cannot fight walk with reason. This is my case. And you say, okay, let's go reason by reason. Let's fight over ideas. And sometimes you just can't fight with woke people over reason. I said, so many times. And we have seen the protest in elite campuses in the US on October 8th before Israel had done anything. So
Yes.
maybe sometimes we need to say no. Why not? Just because. Because we cannot fight. Reason will always have another way of reason. And this is
Well, that maybe,
maybe,
yeah, but I've faced this kind of question because my most recent book is called Rationality, and
yes.
it says not only that we should be rational, but this is what rationality optimally consists of. And a question that I get is, how do you convince someone? Sometimes it's the woke ideologue, sometimes it's the Donald Trump "Make America Great Again" ideologues. They really believe something. How can you persuade them out of it? The answer is sometimes you can't. It's like if you ask me, how do I persuade the Pope that Jesus was not the Son of God and didn't rise from the dead and didn't die for our sins? I'd say, forget it. You're not going to convince them. And there's some people you're not going to convince. But there are some people who haven't, as we say, swallowed the Kool-Aid or taken the red pill that are still open to reason. They're new babies who are born all the time. They're not born woke. You can try to convince them. And then sometimes people, even if they are convinced, there can be a shock, such as in the United States, many were people on the left and the center were shocked by the extent of Donald Trump's victory. And almost everyone now agrees that what he capitalized on was a backlash against the excesses of woke, even though Kamala Harris tried to distance herself from wokeness. She had a history that the Republicans exploited. So a shock like that can also we know that it doesn't convert the dyed-in-the-wool ideologues. We know this from like a famous study, such as social psychologists infiltrated a cult that said that the world was going to end on December 31st, 1950. And so the social psychologists joined the cult to see what would happen on January 1st when the world didn't end. Some of them peeled away. Some of them, they were more adamant than ever. They said, oh, well, we miscalculated the date. So some of them did defect. And likewise with the woke coalition, you're right that some of them, there's just no convincing, like the Pope and the resurrection. Forget about it. But some will. Some will be clobbered over the head with reality.
And maybe woke people don't have so many children, which leads me, I think, to my next question. Moses Mendelssohn made a significant intellectual contribution during the Jewish Enlightenment. And again, it's very important to me as an Israeli Jewish Orthodox Jew, attempted to fuse Judaism with Western culture. However, and this is very important, most of his children converted to Christianity, I think, as he was alive, and he has no Jewish grandson.
Mm.
And and I think that this was a question about the sustainability of his ideals. And current liberal trends in the West are associated with low birth rate, promoting concern about the long-term viability of the Enlightenment values. So in Black slang, you explore the implication of human nature on society. My question is, do you believe that Enlightenment paradigm is sustainable in light of historical example like Moses Mendelssohn and the current demographic trend, such as lower birth rates in Western societies, especially in the liberal part, where enlightenment plays a bigger part?
Well, you're right that there's, in terms of the development of religious belief, religious affiliation, there are trends that are going in two different directions. Namely, in general, when people shift their religious affiliation, they tend to be moving away from religion, especially in younger generations, younger cohorts. Moving in the other direction, it is true of virtually every major religion that the more orthodox, the more religious, the more babies. And this is obviously true in Judaism with the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox. It's true in Christianity. It's true in Islam. What this will do, whether though the children of religious people will all stay religious as they grow up and have children of their own, that we don't yet know. So there could be a demographic effect, and that could affect. I mean, the only way that it would affect adoption of Enlightenment values is if that was transmitted with the belief system of the parents. Now, of course, not genetically. I don't think that believing in Enlightenment values is a genetic trait, but of course, it is a cultural trait. But cultures change. People sometimes escape their family upbringing. As we see in the huge amount of assimilation in the United States. So we don't really know how these different trends will balance out, but the ideas are the ideas, and it's very hard to promote an idea by saying people who have this idea should have more babies.
Okay. Now, I think that my last question is there is Mike, I quoted you on my intelligence book, and there is a last chapter, The Dark Side of Intelligence. And I quoted you from a Harvard lecture that you gave in 2016 after Trump was elected the first time. And the topic was, I think, did the social media help get Trump elected? And you said that people are lean. I don't remember the exact words. People are linked to the alt-right because because they find truth about race, about intelligence that they never heard of. And they never heard of in their academia and in the New York Times. And they are not immune against those truths. And this is why we must
Yeah.
we must teach
Also, they're not.
those things.
Yes, they're also not immune against some of the untruths, the exaggerations. It's a
Okay,
whole
and
world
yes,
that we haven't ever thought about before. Yeah.
this is great. Now, two things. One, you got a very big backlash after saying those very, very correct, true things. So even after saying, listen, this is very important that we teach intelligence and race and genetics in order not to be racist and anti-black and etc. And my question is, I think that this is even worse today. Would you agree? And second, what can we do to overcome it? How can
Yeah, it is worse today. And I know that many smart people that I know who have reacted so vehemently against the repression of ideas, the canceling, the censoring, that they've gone all the way over to Donald Trump supporters. Now, if you're interested in truth, if you're interested in scientific mindset, probably the Donald Trump ideology is not your friend. But they feel so excluded, so outraged, and correctly noting that there is a repression of ideas on the academic left, that there's a complete rebound. So that is a problem. That's one of the reasons why I've been pushing back against the kind of repression of ideas in academia, largely from the left. From outside academia, it's largely from the right, from politicians, especially in state universities, but from within academia, it's mostly from the left, because it distorts the entire intellectual landscape. It means that our understanding of issues is distorted. It means that people have to choose sides and become polarized into two ideological extremes. These are all, I think, dangerous to the mission of education, research, intellectual life in the tradition of the Enlightenment, which is we should figure out how the world works so that we can pursue moral goals such as peace and life and education and safety and health.
Wow, thank you so much. We said 30 minutes, so it's 30 minutes. If may I ask one last question, it's good. If not, I promised 30 minutes.
One last question, sure.
Okay, so Douglas Murray, and which I spoke with him recently, his next book is going to be about Israel and the West. And basically, Mary's idea is that the current battle, the current war in Israel is not just between Israel and Gaza, between Israel and Islam. It's between good versus evil. And if Israeli lose in this field, Europe and the West will lose also. And as a man with so much experience and a broad perspective of everything, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's I don't know if I would say good versus evil. I think there's a tragedy where there's I'm going to say something that everyone listening knows. There is no clear, perfectly moral solution. We're in a tragedy in the Middle East where anything that we do has terrible human costs. That's what we have to recognize, that there is no angel and devil. Whatever the best solution is going to be one that still is going to result in a lot of harm. But I agree that if the enemies, the haters of Israel prevail, it won't just be Israel that suffers, but what we value about West modernity, Enlightenment values, simply because it's based on the hostility to Israel is not grounded in the best calculation of what is the most humane course of action, but truly is one-sided, moralistic, demonizing, and therefore inconsistent with an intellectual, careful, moral mindset.
And just to quote Sam Harris, to put Israel and Gaza on the same cultural level basically means that cultural progress is impossible. If you say Israel and Gaza are in the same cultural level, you deny the ability for cultural progress. This is the idea of Sam Harris. I think it's very smart. Professor Steven Pinkett.
I agree with that, yeah.
Professor Steven Pinkett, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything that you do for humanity. And you inspired me in so many ways, and your books are fantastic. I really appreciate your time.
That's very kind of you, Roy. It's been a pleasure to be on. Good luck to you and good luck to your listeners.
Oh, bye-bye. Thank you.